bring you Killer Wives, episode 47. Taxi Cab. These are the case facts against Beatrice Camper, who had her husband terminated. Isn't trust a bitch? Peekskill, New York, famous birthplace of actors Mel Gibson and Stanley Tucci, but also made famous for the murder of one Mr. Terry Camper. The quiet, picturesque innocence of Peekskill is at times broken only by the sound of Amtrak splitting her boundaries. Peekskill lies on a bay along the east side of the Hudson River, across from Jones Point, where at one time Joseph Walker Biney birthed the Crayola factory. Yes, that very same factory that manufactures crayons today. In the year 2012, Peekskill enjoyed a cozy population of 24,000 Peekskillians, hardly the place where someone would imagine a planned murder of innocents occurring. Surely the purposeful killing of the town's beloved taxi driver was a scenario better suited to the fast-paced life of its southern neighbor, New York City. But murder has no preference for towns it visits any more than the towns it passes over where money is involved. On the night of October 2nd, 2012, Beatrice Camper solidified her dark and twisted plans to have her husband murdered at the hands of an ex-con named John Murray. Beatrice had been romantically involved with Murray for more than 1 year before she ever finalized her plans to have her husband murdered. But isn't it funny how society imagines evil through a Ouija board misused in a dark attic, or perhaps a possessed baby's doll, but never a wife who professes the words, "I love you." As her husband ended his shift on the night before his death, town members would finally learn that evil could come from some of the most peacefully assuming wives. Beatrice Camper grew close to Mr. Murray, her lover and future husband's killer, through his family in Queens, New York. Murray had been convicted of 2 murders in the year 1977 and was sentenced to 25 years to life for that crime. Now, the two had become a very secretive affair while he was still yet in prison. This is good wife of the year material. Now, while Murray was awaiting parole, he and Beatrice began planning the murder of Terry Camper, his co-conspirator's husband. Murray utilized the prison's telephone system at the time to gather information on his intended victim, her husband. Throughout his planning, he and Beatrice Camper had numerous telephone conversations. Murray was paroled in late 2011, so he's out of prison now and on parole. Now, this after serving more than 30 years on that life sentence. So he should be glad to be out, not preparing to plan to get back in there through killing again. You see, shortly after Murray's release, Beatrice began working on his mind and his body sexually in the hopes of grooming him towards the completion of another dalliance with murder. You see, in truth, I believe the reason that she chose an ex-con was that she needed someone who already had a proven track record in getting the job done and in keeping his stupid mouth shut. At least keep it shut for fear of returning to the prison from which he was sprung. But in all of these cases, there's always a little string in the fabric that's sprung, and you can catch somebody committing a crime. Beyond his past convictions for murder, Murray was not an innocent man. He was not a saint. Murray, too, was married and living with his wife at 180 Liberty Street in Newburgh, New York. This is south of where she was living. Now, at this point in the planning, Murray's wife knew nothing of the sexual relationship with Beatrice and Peekskill, nor of planning of Mr. Camper's murder. So both of their spouses were on the outs. They had no idea what's going on. For Beatrice more than Murray, the motive for this crime were obviously driven by greed and selfishness, which is all these killer wives cases. Now, why, you might ask? Because in the months leading up to the murder, Beatrice Camper took out 2 very healthy life insurance policies on her husband, listing herself, as get this, as a sole beneficiary. Wow. She and Murray were planning to be together after her husband's death, and it was she, now, who promised to share her insurance benefits. Now, always in these killer wives cases, you always will notice a better spouse, the guy being killed, so one can take on a lesser spouse and pay him. Why? I don't know. And prior to being married to Terry, Beatrice was a struggling single mother of 2 girls until the day that she took a ride in Terry's cab. Now, at that time, as during his killing, Terry owned his own taxi cab company with several vehicles in the small town of Peekskill. In no time, Terry and Beatrice became married, and Terry moved the pair of them and the girls into a high-rise apartment at 1101 Brown Street in Peeksville, New York. And this location will remain as the address all the way up to his untimely demise, or what we call murder at the hands of your own wife. In the marriage, Terry did as many men would who step up to the plate and take care of a single mother with children, and that is to work harder than they ever did before. Terry provided for the family, whereas before he had only himself to take care of. And many guys out there know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, the couple had been married for 10 years, with the last year being the time she was planning an affair and planning her own husband's murder. Although the plan was hatched long before the night of the second, it was Beatrice's polished idea to have Murray lure her husband to a certain section of the town under the ruse of needing a taxi for a ride. This taxi ride would lead to nowhere, though. Beatrice would help Murray determine where Mr. Camper would be on the afternoon of his planned execution. This took a lot of planning to get somebody killed so it would look like it was just an accident or a robbery gone wrong. Now, unlike Beatrice's usual lack of concern for Terry's whereabouts, Beatrice constantly checked to see where Terry was on the afternoon of the murder. There can be nothing better than a wife caring for you on the day she chooses to kill you. And Murray would drive his personal vehicle within a block of where he would call Terry with a burner phone for a fare pickup. In a lot of these cases, people use burner phones. Murray would use this same burner phone to call and keep in contact with Beatrice about the happenings of the planned ambush. They thought they were slick. And when Murray was parked on the right in a quiet neighborhood, he made the call.
You're watching M&N, the Men's Channel.
Murray made the call at approximately 1:30 p.m. in the afternoon Peekskill time, requesting a passenger pickup on Pine Street in Peeksville. Now try to say that fast. Terry Camper had no reason to expect this fare was going to be anything else but a normal ride, as he usually does. But would Terry be wrong, awfully wrong in this one situation? What would happen if you didn't pick up one passenger? Terry arrived on Pine Street as scheduled and welcomed passenger Murray in his cab, not knowing that his passenger had a loaded handgun behind the driver's seat. Terry then asked Mr. Murray where he was going, and Murray responded, nowhere, and then raised a pistol he had in his person to the back of Terry's head. And what do you imagine happened next? Without any warning, Terrence Camper was shot in the base of his skull with a handgun around 1:45 p.m. on that Wednesday afternoon. Murray then took Terry's iPhone and his wallet from his dead body to make it appear as if it were a robbery gone bad. And I don't know how many of these cases that you hear. Somewhere it is that people get the idea that they can make a murder look like a robbery gone bad. But it doesn't work. Now Murray would exit the vehicle and casually saunter back to his own parked car a distance away and drive back across the Bear Mountain Bridge in the direction of his home. Now along the route, Murray would throw Terry's iPhone out of the passenger window onto a wooded side of the road. He thought this was keeping him safe from being tracked, but he didn't know that that tracking would mark the spot where he passed with his vehicle. At approximately 2:10 p.m., a female postal worker delivering her mail on her route observed Terry's gray cab parked in the area of 118 Pine Street facing the wrong direction. After he shot him, the car had coasted to the opposite side of the street. And she observed that the driver was neither moving nor did he respond to her questioning of whether he was all right. She said, "Are you okay, sir? Are you all right?" It was at this time that she pulled out her cell phone and called 911. The things we find on our mail routes. On arrival, first responders immediately recognized the non-responsive driver as Terry Camper, known to them as a local taxi cab driver. Everybody knew Terry in the town. Everybody knew he owned that taxi company. He was a great person. First responders observed that Terry Camper had a blood dripping from the left side of his head, behind his ear, by his neck area. It was then that Terry was extricated from his vehicle and then transported to Hudson Valley Hospital Center, where he was pronounced dead at 3:05 p.m. Only a few hours had gone by from the time that he was called for the ride to the morgue table. Peekskill Police Department, who were now on the scene, began to initiate a very wide-ranging investigation, including using the cameras that recorded cars crossing over the Bear Mountain Bridge from Peekskill towards Newburgh and West Point. They were on the hunt for Terry's killers. Now, investigators were pleasantly surprised when they narrowed their video search to around the time of the murder, only to find that Mr. Murray crossing over and back again of the Bear Mountain Bridge. So he did not imagine that in all of his planning, that there's cameras everywhere in America today, in all foreign countries. The numerous interviews were conducted along with extensive forensic analysis of the situation, the cameras, and Murray. Now, one of those interviews was with Terry Camper's wife, Beatrice Camper, the wife of the year now. She was interviewed by detectives on October the 4th, just one day after the murder, and based on various sources' information on October the 4th, 2012, members of the Peekskill Police Department set up surveillance on John Murray's home, where he lived at, and then they took him into custody in Newburgh. From Newburgh, he was transported back to Peekskill. See, sometimes it only takes one day before you're caught, not 2 or 3 years like a lot of people believe. And Beatrice Camper was arrested a day later on Friday morning of that week and charged with second-degree murder, a felony. That's after they talked to John. John Murray also was charged with second-degree murder in connection with Terrence Camper's death. So an ex-con who's on parole is going to go back to prison for love. Now, the two defendants were arraigned in Peekskill City Court on that Friday and were subsequently held pending trial without bail. Don't let these people out of prison. If you did it once, you do it again. And now in court, Beatrice Camper would do a 180. Now, she would do this concerning her involvement in her husband's murder. It wasn't me, it was him. It would appear that Beatrice would do any and everything to save her own hide. This woman was good at it. It took her a year to plan the death and only a day to plan salvation for herself. A year before, Beatrice Camper turned on her husband, Terry Camper, a popular Peekskill cab driver, by taking out 2 life insurance policies on him before her lover, ex-con John Murray, shot him to death in the back of the head. So she did all of this to pretend that she was with an ex-con, and now she pretends that she's with her husband. In court, Beatrice Camper turned on Murray, testifying against him at his murder trial, in Westchester County Court in White Plains after pleading guilty to second-degree murder in a deal now that would net her 15 years to life in prison. So she saved her hide. She could do 15 years. And Beatrice told the court of the love affair that she had with Mary, or she was married to Terry Camper. She said it was Mary's idea to kill her husband, not hers, and that she only went along with it. How many people out there would just go along with the sole idea of having a spouse killed? I'm just going to go along with it. Doesn't make good sense. Peekskill Detective Joseph McGann testified how he broke the case when he found in Beatrice Camper's Peekskill apartment a shoebox now containing letters Mr. Murray sent her while he was serving time at the Fishkill Correctional Facility in Beacon, New York. So, you knew this guy. That's how they were able to track the case down. Detective McGann also testified to finding the 2 life insurance policies she got in her husband's name during a search for a Brown Street home in plain sight in the living room on a dresser. She was going to cash in on these 2 insurance policies now that he was dead. She hadn't addressed the funeral arrangements yet. The family was wondering, but she was addressing the insurance. Now, Mrs. Jacqueline Camper, who was Mr. Terry Camper's sister, flew to Peekskill from California for the trial and testified that she advised her brother to end the marriage, which began about 10 years ago, she says, prior to his death. And sometimes when your family suggests that, it's not good, but sometimes they're right. Beatrice Camper, she said, would fly into rages and tell Terry Camper that she hated him. Now, whether you're a man out there watching me right now or a woman, you know people who say this. They hate the person that they married to. She went on to explain that the family would talk to him about leaving her, but he would always say that I'll give her yet another chance. He said, that's my wife. She said, it's up to you, but I would leave her. If someone constantly spits in your face and say they hate you, I would leave, which was good advice. And I question you out there now, if you're in this type of situation, to get out. The official said of Terry that he came from a large family here in Peekskill that led to Highland Falls, very wide-ranging area. He said Terry never was a problem. He was the kind of guy who, in all of these communities that you meet every day, you never give them a second thought until something like this happens. He was a great person. He said just a real loss to not only his family, but a lot of us who are friends as well. For Killer Wives, this is Charles Rivers. Thank you for watching.